Are you a Salesforce professional that's comfortable building flows, but you have no idea how to write code? Well, I'm here to tell you that flows share many of the same fundamentals as Apex. And we will cover some of those similarities today. So believe me when I say, if you understand how to build good flows, you can eventually start writing good Apex code. The point of this video is to help you feel more comfortable and confident learning how to code in Apex. Do not get discouraged if you don't understand everything that I say in this video. Just take some time to review it later on and do some research on your own. Now, let's elevate your skill set. Flowing into Apex is beneficial for a few different reasons. First, many Salesforce orgs contain a lot of pre-existing code, and you're going to need to understand what that code is doing. Next, many Salesforce jobs are starting to require the knowledge of Apex. And of course, learning Apex is great if you would like to make more
money.
But you may be wondering, how exactly can I start learning Apex? You can do it by flowing into Apex. I will show you how flow fundamentals and Apex fundamentals are related, and then we will use that knowledge to convert a simple flow into Apex. Now let's get started. Let's say that a client wants us to update the next steps field for all existing closed opportunities. If the closed opportunity was won, then the next steps field should get updated to nurture and upsell. Otherwise, the next steps field should get updated to reach out to the client for feedback. I've already created a flow to handle this business requirement. So basically, we will want to get all closed opportunities, loop through that list of opportunities, check to see if each opportunity is won or not, then update the next steps field accordingly. Disclaimer: I have built this flow this way so that we can cover converting flow elements into Apex. However, I know that there is a better way to write this flow. Now let's start flowing into Apex. The first topic we will cover is variables. In flows, we use variables to store information that will be reused throughout the flow. Well, you'll be happy to know that variables work the same way in Apex. So in Apex, you create variables that can be reused throughout your code. Variables can be initialized with a default value, and most variables that you create can be updated throughout your code. Here's an example of how we would initialize a variable for the list of opportunities that we want to update. You can create different types of variables in both flows and Apex. When you create a variable in a flow, you have to specify the data type of that variable. For example, we are creating a variable to store a list of opportunities that we want to update. In Apex, you also have to define the data type of the variable. The data types are very similar with some overlap. However, there are some data types that have different names and uses. When you start learning Apex, take some time to understand the different data types and how they relate to flows. One special type of variable that I'm sure you all have used before is the collection variable. In flows, the collection variable is used to store multiple values or a collection of values. In Apex, you can also create collection variables. However, in Apex, there are a few different types of collection variables. So Apex collections consist of lists, sets, and maps that can be used to store multiple values. I'm going to show you an example of how to create each type of collection variable. Lists contain a collection of ordered values. So here I'm creating a list of name values. Sets contain a collection of unique values, meaning that you cannot store a specific value in the variable more than once. Here I'm creating a set of conference name values. And maps are a collection of key value pairs. Here I'm creating a map of cities to states, where values like New Orleans can be mapped to Louisiana. As you build out your flows, it's helpful to add descriptions to elements and variables so that other people can understand what the flow is doing. The Apex equivalent of descriptions are comments. You can add comments to Apex code to let other developers know what your code is trying to accomplish. One important thing to remember about adding comments in Apex is that you should try not to over-comment your code and only add comments as needed. Every single line of code in Apex does not need a comment. Your code should basically self-document itself if you are writing the code correctly. Comments are best for giving an overview of a section of code or for explaining a complex area of the code. In flows, you can use the Get Records element to get a list of records based on a set of criteria that you define. In Apex, if you want to get a list of records, you can use a SQL query. You may have used SQL queries in the past through the Dev Console or Workbench. SQL queries allow you to pull in data from Salesforce to use throughout your code, just like you would in a flow. In SQL queries, you have to specify which field you want to receive, which object you want to get records from, and also specify any criteria that should be used to filter the overall list of records. You have the ability to sort the records returned from a query, and you can also specify how many records are returned in the query. The results of the queries can be stored in collection variables, which we mentioned earlier. After you get a list of records, you may need to loop through those records in order to update values. Flows have loop elements that allow you to loop through collection variables and perform actions during each iteration of the loop. Apex also has loops that allow you to accomplish the same thing. However, Apex loops can accomplish more than just looping through records. Apex allows you to create 5 different types of loops based on the requirement needed. So it's important to review each type of loop and decide which loop would work best for your code. Flows have decision elements, which allow you to define scenarios that will occur for specific conditions. Apex has something similar called conditional statements. Conditional statements are extremely similar to the if function in Salesforce formulas. Basically, conditional statements work like this. If this condition is met, run this set of code. Else, if the second condition is met, run this different set of code. And if none of those conditions are met, run a completely different set of code. So for our example, if the opportunity is marked as 1, we should update the next steps field to nurture and upsell. Otherwise, the next steps field should be updated to reach out to the client for feedback. In flows, you can use the assignment element to update a variable's value or to add new values to a collection variable. In Apex, assignments are very similar. If you pay attention to the assignment flow element, you'll see that it has an equal sign as the icon for the element. In Apex, you will use the equal sign in most cases to assign values to variables. Now, if you want to add new values to a collection variable, you can use this feature called the add method to add values to an existing collection variable. Next, we will cover the ability to create, update, and delete records. In flows, there are specific elements available to handle these functions. In Apex, you will use what is known as DML Operations to manipulate data in Salesforce. And it's pretty straightforward, by the way. If you want to update a set of records, like how we want to update the closed opportunities, you will just use the update DML statement to update a collection variable. There are other DML statements available like insert, upsert, and delete. Please note that you will need to define variables with the data you want before you use them in a DML statement. The last flow element that I will cover is the fault path. We could use the fault paths to handle errors that may occur while updating the opportunities. In Apex, we would use exception handling to handle errors that may occur in our code. You may have seen exception errors in Salesforce before, such as the DML exception when saving records. In order to handle exceptions, we can use what is known as a try-catch statement. Try-catch statements work like this. The code will try to run the first part of the statement, but if any errors occur, the catch part will catch the errors and you will be able to handle the errors from there. So maybe you'll want to print the error to the debug logs or even show the error to the user if we're using a Lightning Web Component. Now that we have gone over the fundamentals, let's convert this flow that I showed earlier into Apex. Reminder, we are updating the next steps field for all existing closed opportunities. Since this is a one-time update, We will not need to worry about creating Apex classes or triggers for this use case. Instead, we will write a simple Apex script that can be ran from the Execute Anonymous feature in the developer console. Apex scripts give you the ability to automate things on demand within Salesforce, which can be convenient for running field updates, assigning permission sets, and more. Disclaimer: do not, under any circumstance, use the Execute Anonymous feature in a production environment if you do not know what you're doing or if you haven't tested the code. Code ran in the Execute Anonymous window can change data in Salesforce instantly, and you do not want to make any unintended changes in a production environment. The first thing you'll want to do is open the developer console. So to do that, you'll want to navigate to Setup in Salesforce, click on this gear icon, and then select the developer console option. From there, the developer console will open. Now, to get to the Execute Anonymous window, you'll want to go to the Debug menu, and then you'll click on Open Execute Anonymous window. So the first thing we'll want to do is take this Get All Closed Opportunities element and convert this into Apex. So how we will do that is to create a list variable in Apex and store the result of a SQL query in that variable. So first I'll add this comment and just say get list of closed opportunities. Now, if you remember earlier on in this video, I mentioned that you have to define a data type for your variables in Apex, just like how you would in the flows. So I'm going to create a list of opportunities to store the closed opportunities in. So to do that, we will say list of opportunity. So that's the data type of this variable. And we're going to name this variable closed opties. Now we're going to add in the SQL query. So you're going to put these brackets in and hit enter so that it structures the code in a clean way. Now we want to get all of the fields that we need and plan on reusing throughout the code. We need to get those from the opportunity, and we want to get all of the opportunities where is closed is true. So this is how that query would look. Select ID is closed is 1, and next step from opportunity where is closed equals true. And then just make sure that you add your semicolon. So this query will run and all of the results will get stored in this closed opties variable. So now we want to create a variable that will be used to hold all of the updated opportunities. And we're going to just store those in a list, and we'll say create a list to hold the updated opportunities. And we'll create the list by saying list of opportunity, and we'll call this variable updated opties. And we're just initializing this variable. So to do that, we'll say new list of opportunity, and just make sure that you add the parentheses. Okay, so I just want to stop the demo for a second because I noticed that as I was writing out the code that I was adding comments before each line of code, even though I just told you not to do that earlier in the video. So the reason why I'm doing that here is because I want you to be able to understand each line of code that I'm writing out. But whenever you're writing out production code, do not comment each line of code. That's not best practice, and other developers will not want to read that either. So yeah, let's just hop back into the demo. And so now the next thing that we'll want to do is loop through all the closed opportunities so that we can update that next steps field. So first I'll add a comment and say loop through all closed opportunities and update the next step field. So we want to use a for loop for this so that we can loop through all of the opportunities in that closed opties variable. So to do that, we will say for each opportunity. So we would say opportunity, we'll just say opti. So for each opportunity inside of the closed opties variable, we want to check to see if the opportunity is one or if it's not one. So to do that, we're going to use the conditional statements, which is the if-else statements. So if the opportunity is one, then we want to update the opportunity's next step field to nurture and upsell. And if the opportunity is not one, so else, we want to update the opportunity's next step field to reach out to the client for feedback. So once we check to see if the opportunity is one or not, and we update the next step field, we can add the updated opportunity into that list of updated opportunities. So to do that, we will get the updated opportunities variable. So updated opties, then we'll say .add. So this is the .add method, and we will reference the opportunity that we are looping through in this for loop. So opti. Now that we have looped through all of the opportunities, we've updated the next steps field, we can now run the update. But I want to add in some error handling just in case any issues occur whenever we try to update the opportunities. So to do that, we're going to add our DML operation inside of a try-catch statement. We will say try to run an update for the updated opties variable. And it's that simple. Now we want to try to catch any exceptions that may happen whenever we run the update. And typically those will be DML exceptions. So we'll say DML exception. Just say error. And we just want to print to the debug logs if an error occurs. So we'll say system.debug. There was an error. And we'll just add this message. So this is how we would update the opportunities and catch any errors that may occur during the updates. So also I'm going to add a comment here just so that you all understand. Update the opportunities and catch any errors. So now you just want to go through your code and make sure that everything looks correct. I did end up updating this variable name. So just make sure that you have your variable name spelled right and everything is looking correct. So I think we can go ahead and execute the code. So we'll just click execute and hopefully there won't be any errors. We'll see. Okay, looks like there weren't any errors. So if you have the checkbox checked to say open log, this log will open, but we're not going to cover what this log is doing today. So I'm just going to close that out. But what I will do is run a query to make sure that all of the next steps fields got updated for all of the opportunities. So we're just going to run that exact same query that we ran in the code. So select ID is closed is 1 and next step from opportunity where is closed equals true. So we're just going to run this query and we can see that all of the next steps fields got updated. So if the opportunity was 1, it was updated to nurture and upsell. And if the opportunity was not 1, so if is 1 was false, it was updated to reach out to the client for feedback. So the code is working as expected and we successfully flowed into Apex. Isn't that awesome? Now that you have a better understanding of how flows and Apex are related, you might be wondering what you should do to continue flowing into Apex. First, I recommend that you start converting your own flows into Apex. You could build out a test flow, do some research, and then figure out how to convert that flow into Apex. You should also start reviewing other Apex topics that we didn't cover here, such as classes, triggers, and object-oriented programming. You should research how to use different developer tools such as GitHub and VS Code, which will be essential in your journey as a developer. Now, if you want to be a rockstar developer, you'll also want to make sure that you're writing clean code, which is just making sure that your code is easy to read, it's maintainable, and that it's scalable. Congratulations, you have finally started flowing into Apex. If you've learned anything new or if you have any questions for me, just leave them in the comments and don't forget to throw a like on this video. Thanks for watching. Now let's go shock the world.